not here, but I'm going to speak for the both of us.
Swear to, sir. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Okay, I'm looking to seek a variance for the carport, as you said. The property line on that side of the house is, unfortunately, it's closer than the other side, which is where I can't put it because of the septic and air conditioning. There's other things there. I can't get to it driving over the septic fields. There is a small wooded area between our property and next door neighbor. But I wanted to just go 10 feet off the garage, and just so I have an antique truck I want to have covered. So it's going to be an open-sided building, just a shed roof attached to the garage with 3 posts, and just somewhere I can put my truck out of the elements, because it's a 67 vehicle, so it's something I'd like to preserve. My son redid it, so I feel it's the only place I can really put it, and I think it's something that certainly add value to the house. And I'm having a company, Bayhorse, is going to be doing the work. It's what I think they believe they call a pavilion. It's like half a pavilion is what it is. So it's like the peak down to one side. They put 2 of them together, make a 4-post pavilion, say for out in the yard somewhere. So that's what I'm looking to do, and I feel it's the way I plan to do it. I think it's not going to be anything unsightly. I think it's just going to be an asset to the property. So they make it better for us once we do sell the house, maybe one day, or somebody certainly would get some good use out of it.
I have a question. For the record, could you tell us why you can't put your classic truck into the 2-bay garage?
Well, we have 4 vehicles, my wife's car, my car, and I have another truck. It's a newer being an 88 that's in pristine condition. I use that pretty much as my work truck that I do any kind of towing my trailer with. This other truck is basically if you will, recreational. They have antique insurance on them, so they are for bringing to a show or just for a nice Sunday drive. So it's something that I want to preserve, and I do have the other 2 garages filled with 2 other vehicles. So I just want to add the 3rd garage for that one vehicle. My car can sit out, I could care less, but that it's an antique, I really would like to have it undercover.
Anyone else have any questions?
John, did we hear from any of the neighbors?
We will in a minute. I wanted
I
to see
meant in writing.
if anyone had any questions specifically for the applicant before I opened it up. No questions. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this application?
Yes, do I have to be sworn in?
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And would you please give your name and address to the secretary?
Okay, I'm Larissa Nash. I live on the other side of the property line, 284 Lakeshore Drive. I feel that Mr. Cello's request is a reasonable one, but my biggest concern is with the execution of the build when that happens. What assurance do I have? Who's going to determine the 12 feet, the accuracy of that from the property line? I don't know if there's going to be a survey required to be done by that company, or they're going to go off of the present Lakeshore Village map that was originally done for the, lots on that Lakeshore Drive. But that's my biggest concern, that when they execute the build, this company, that it's done properly. So from the building inspector's side of it, what's the process of that before the footings are poured and permanent?
Well, okay, There is a state survey, as I recall, on what would be the far side of the carport. I can't speak for the building inspector, however, and he's not here tonight, but I would certainly imagine that he would do the measurements. He's usually a pretty thorough fellow. And I would imagine he would do the measurements prior to or when it's done, either way.
Well, this isn't like, this is something like brand new that's, never been done before, so I'm sure there's a process that has to be followed so that, because no one's property line is like this.
Right.
So if the property line is on an angle, before the permanent cement footings get put down, it's just, it seems logical that there should be someone there to make sure that the variance is being followed appropriately.
The drawing that we were provided with identifies the different parts of the survey from the survey map, identifying the survey pins that are in the ground, and that's what the dimensions were taken off of. I don't know if you've seen that drawing.
Yeah, I have that.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that, there's a company doing it for Wayne. So, they can come in and they can, well, we think the 12 feet is here. It's like, and then the building inspectors, are they going to come when it's finished?
No.
That's a little bit too late if it's not put down properly,
When he applied for the building permit, they have their plans they present, and that includes the footings, so it'd be dimensions and where they're placed. So the footings are dug, and then before the cement is poured, the building inspector is supposed to come out and check the footings and make sure everything's okay, both the depth of it and where it's located. I mean, that's what I dealt with like 2 years ago with the new deck I had put in the back. I'd have the building inspector come out prior to the pouring of the concrete.
So you have to notify the building inspector
I tell
for
him,
that?
I had to tell him, yep, the footings are ready. Can you come out and look at them? And he comes out and looks at it. He says, everything's fine. Then I got my contractor and he poured the concrete after that. Mm-hmm. So that's how they validate and verify that the footings are correctly placed, and also, that the hole is the right depth and that kind of thing, the right diameter. Mm-hmm. So that should take place. I mean, that took place with me just a couple years ago.
Did I answer your question?
Yep,
Okay.
that's it.
Anyone else that would have any questions or concerns? We make it tough on you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And would you please give your name and address to the secretary?
Darren Kittle, 278 Lake Shore Drive, Pleasant Valley, New York, obviously. I'm Wayne's neighbor on the other side of the house. Larissa is the one that's really going to be impacted by it the most, because it's going to be on her side of Wayne's house. But I just want to say I have no problem with the variance at all, and I welcome the opportunity to have that done for him.
Okay. Anyone else? Nobody else from the audience? Okay. We're going to close the public portion of this appeal, and obviously we'll arrive at a decision tonight. But moving on to the next appeal, it is an interpretation application, and it is from Pleasant Valley Energy Center. And they're applying for a battery storage facility. Now, having spoken with council, it should first go to the planning board. As I look at this application for an interpretation, it seems to be in order, and I would move, well, first of all, is there anyone here that would like to speak to the application?
Yes. My name is Alexandra Downey. I'm from Corley Gartland Rapplier. I'm an attorney representing. Sure. My name is Alexandra Downey. I'm from Corbly Gartland Rapplier. I'm an attorney that's representing Pleasant Valley Energy Center. I'm here tonight with a representative from Pleasant Valley Energy Center, Scott Connick, who would like to address the board. Thank you.
What, yeah, our attorney would like to,
Yeah, I just, one of the things that I discussed with the chair was that there will be,
you know, Jim, yeah?
I'm Jim Nelson, I haven't seen you in a while, so that's to your good fortune. One of the things that I discussed with the chair is that you have to have a public hearing, and that's where a zoning board takes in its facts in order to make its decisions on interpretations and appeals and variances. And so before Mr. Connick speaks, I just wanted to remind him and the board that the facts that the board's going to be able to consider should be the facts that are presented at the public hearing. And I'm assuming the applicant will come back for the hearing to do that, but subject to that, I have no problem with Mr. Connick speaking to the board.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd be reinventing the wheel, so we say here, by doing this, because there will be no decision made tonight, there will be no interpretation done tonight until this goes to the planning board and comes back to us. And by nature of the calendar, which we can't argue with, we have our meeting tonight, the 25th. It goes to the planning board, who has their next meeting the 13th, and then they need 30 days. Our next meeting is the 22nd of February, which is not within that 30 days. So the planning board decision would not come back to us, and we would not rule on the interpretation until March 22nd. If that's understood, and if you still want to speak to this, feel free, sir.
I would like to speak to it, and I have a physical presentation if I'm allowed to hand it out. I was asked for.
No problem.
Okay.
Again, to the extent that it's going to be considered formally by the board in making its decision, this all should be presented at the hearing.
Understand.
John, does he need to be sworn in?
No, he does, yes. Yeah. You are a representative of the company, right? Yes. Okay. Before you give any testimony, I'll swear you. Thank you. We already had this. Yeah, we already had this, sir. Yeah. So
I
you-
think there is this is slightly updated from the one that was.
Okay. Just thought we saved you a tree, that's all. Okay. Thank you for reminding me. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you please, again, give your name and address to the young lady at the end of the table?
My name is Scott Connick with East Point Energy, address 200 Garrett Street, Suite J, Charlottesville, Virginia. 22902. Oh, there it is. Thank you all for making the time. I do really appreciate it. I know it's a lot to come out here. My name is Scott. As I mentioned, I work with a company called East Point Energy, who's developing this project that we've named Pleasant Valley Energy Center. A little bit of context. So back in early 2020, we got a zoning determination letter from the then zoning administrator, and saying that a battery storage project, a grid-scale battery storage project like what we're proposing, would fall under the public utility facility use. Then in early 2022, that was reaffirmed by the zoning administrator. And then last fall, in October, we got a third zoning determination letter that reversed the previous two, and said that, you know, our project did not fall under that. So wanted to give you a brief presentation just to get you up to speed with what we're talking about. Again, understand that nothing will be determined tonight. And that, you know, this discussion is more about the interpretation of the code than the merits itself. So as I go along, please don't hesitate to stop me if you have any questions. I'll also point out that there was one page in here that was duplicated, so I apologize for that. So what I hope to cover, an introduction to our company and to grid scale energy storage, an overview of Pleasant Valley Energy Center, and then our council will provide a little context on the zoning interpretation. So about East Point Energy, and this did not print very well in mine, but East Point Energy, owner of Pleasant Valley Energy Center, is a developer, an independent power producer based in Charlottesville, Virginia. We partner with a lot of different stakeholders, utilities, landowners, local officials like yourselves, fire departments, et cetera, to help develop and deliver these projects that benefit the grid, benefit the environment, and help keep the cost of electricity down. And our company is a subsidiary of a company called Equinor, which is a Norwegian energy company based overseas, obviously. So in terms of our team experience, we have a pretty large pipeline of battery storage projects that we're working on today, a 7 gigawatt pipeline. We have 8 megawatt hours of operational battery storage projects in the country right now. That's going to increase by a fair bit, I think, in the next few weeks as we finish another project. That includes 2 projects that we've sold to Dominion Energy, which is a Virginia company, a 20 megawatt and a 15 megawatt project. We've also sold a 100 megawatt project to a company called IPA Power. And, you know, just taking a step back, our founders have a lot of experience in developing renewables projects. They've been doing this for well over a decade, and have delivered over $1.5 billion worth of wind, solar, and battery projects. This project, again, is solely a battery storage project, though. And a picture of our first project is on the team experience page. So what is grid scale energy storage? You know, at its basic level, it's a large rechargeable battery that connects directly to the grid and enables the utilities and grid operators to store electricity when it's not needed and put it back on the grid when it's most needed. So for example, in the middle of the summer, you might charge up the battery in the nighttime when electricity is less expensive and less in demand, and put it back on during the hot hours to help keep the cost of electricity down and also to make sure that the lights stay on. What we use is a proven technology. Lithium-ion batteries are in all sorts of household applications. Cell phones, laptops, electric vehicles. It's the same technology, just on a larger scale. There's no emissions from our project and very minimal noise. And the only exception to that is, you know, typical stormwater that you get with any type of development. The projects help keep the cost of electricity down and displace polluting power plants and are a flexible resource for the grid. So just to touch on a few of the other benefits of these projects, and I won't go into all of these, but contributing to the local economy, you know, these projects are taxable. We often work out pilots with different municipalities, but, you know, they're capital intensive projects that can bring in a lot of revenue for communities. They're very beneficial for renewables. So as you guys know, the grid is transitioning. There's going to be a lot more wind and solar in the future than there is today. And you can't power the grid on wind and solar alone. And so having battery projects on the grid enable you to store that electricity and save it for more useful time. And New York actually has, as far as I'm aware, the largest energy storage goal in the country. Touched on no emissions, peak demand reduction, as I already touched on. Fast response frequency regulation. So, the grid is constantly changing, and demand and supply are not always aligned. Battery projects are really exceptional at balancing out the grid and making sure that supply and demand match each other exactly. So this can be really beneficial for businesses in a community, especially manufacturers, because they have sensitive equipment that could be damaged by changes in voltage, changes in frequency. And these projects help manage that and help local businesses. Transmission and distribution deferral. From time to time, utilities have to build new electrical infrastructure, transmission lines, substations, and these are often very expensive and controversial. And so our projects help defer the need to build some of that equipment. They also help with reliability. So if there's an outage in a neighboring town that has the capability of taking out electricity in a wider area, but our battery project, if it's charged up, can provide electricity for 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours, and give utilities time to respond to the damage that was done, and say in a storm, and keep the lights on. Now, it's by no means a panacea. It's not going to stop every outage, but it does help in the long run. They're quiet and safe, and I'll touch on safety a little bit more in a moment. And there's minimal impact to social services. We're not putting kids in schools. We're not, taxing the police department, et cetera. There's essentially no traffic from this project. So the following slide is an example of what a typical project may look like. This is slide 6. Most of the project consists of metal enclosures that resemble shipping containers. They're single-story structures, so they're not very tall, and that's where the batteries would be held. They'd be permanent on a concrete pad or concrete pier. There'd be some other electrical equipment, inverters, transformers, and then it would connect to the Central Hudson gas and electric substation, which is right next door to where our project is. And the project would be fenced in with vegetative screening, at least on the outward facing sides that are not Central Hudson or the commercial use. So it's going to not stick out too much. So Pleasant Valley Energy Center is contemplated as a 9.5 megawatt, 4 to 6 hour duration system. It will connect to Central Hudson's Tinkertown substation, which is the one right next door to us, next to the transmission lines and the pipeline that is adjacent to us. It would directly connect to their infrastructure, and we have to go through a number of studies with them in order to have the ability to connect to them. And we would end up signing what's called an interconnection agreement that would allow us to interconnect. The project itself helps facilitate the distribution of electricity. There are a lot of challenges to keeping the lights on, and these projects assist with that. The third point there, we don't have a contract to interconnect with them yet. We go through that study process, which generally takes several years, but we're moving along in that. It is sited in the LDR, low-density residential zone, and as it's contemplated, would follow setbacks in the code. So this 8th page just shows where it is in town, and then the 9th slide shows the property itself. And then the following one, the following one is a preliminary site plan. So what it primarily consists of, similar to the rendering before, are metal enclosures, sort of with like cabinet-like structures within them, where the batteries would be held. There's some extra space for augmentation because batteries don't last forever, so you have to overbuild it slightly. There would be transformers and inverters, and then a wire would cut over the Central Hudson easements over to the substation, which is a little hard to see on this page, but it's to the northeast corner of the property. Before I get to safety, any questions so far?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
In the original document I got, the East Point Energy, you referred to the project named Pleasant Valley Energy Center is undergoing studies with New York State Gas and Electric. Is that a mistake, or are you actually studying New York State Gas and Electric for this project that's going to be connected to Central Hudson?
That was a typo. I apologize. We do work with a number of utilities.
Okay. You are going to address lithium-ion battery safety?
Yep, that's the next part.
As it relates to the size of your, okay. I'd like to know exactly what the benefits are to Pleasant Valley residents, other than the tax revenue, and if you have an estimate of the tax revenue that you call as a benefit to Pleasant Valley residents.
I do not have one off the top of my head.
Are there additional benefits to Pleasant Valley residents to have this battery storage in our area?
Yeah, so, on the benefits slide that we touched on, it helps improve reliability.
Because, you talk about transmission and distribution system deferral. We already have large progress, these monster lines, so I think there's not going to be any deferral to that, right? We already have those monster lines in progress.
Yeah.
You talk about minimal impact to social services, but it is going to impact the fire department, correct?
Yes, we do partner with fire departments to make sure.
Could you define partner for me?
So part of it is ensuring that they have the training to respond to a fire.
You will provide that?
Yes, at no cost to the town.
Oh, you will provide that?
Yes, we
Okay.
will.
And the equipment, is there special equipment required?
So generally speaking, fire departments have all the equipment that they need. However, if there are any supplies that they don't already have, then we would provide that on site, again, at no cost to the municipality.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, my guess is that your memory's a lot better than mine, but going back to what we were talking about before, of making sure that what is in front of the board, for purposes of making its decision, is heard at the hearing, rather than tonight, which is just.
So are we getting facts tonight?
The hearing, which is when the board is supposed to formally take the facts, and once the public.
Oh, okay, then
Usually
I
you open the hearing.
misunderstood. I
This
thought
is
this
just a little different, and, I'm not trying to shut you down, but I think it's important that when this does come to a hearing, whatever questions you want asked, that you would want considered by the board in making its decision, are asked then, and Mr. Connick is going to make whatever statements he'll make then. It's what happens at the hearing.
Okay, well, I thought we were
Becomes the
getting the facts, some of the facts tonight, and I was asked if there was questions, so
Yeah.
I took the opportunity.
I understand.
I will be quiet.
No,
Jim,
I will say my.
Jim, if I, getting it all out on the table here, my understanding is that we tonight decide to pass or not pass along this to planning. Planning comes back, and then we do give our interpretation.
The progression tonight, I would suggest, would be to address whether the application is complete. And then there's one item which one of the board members raised earlier, which you might find curable. The next thing I would suggest would be to refer the matter to the planning board, because under the code on variances and interpretations. And interpretations are technically appeals under the state law and the town code. The planning board is to receive a 30-day notice of the application with a request for an opinion transmitted back to your board. And the code goes on further to say that if the planning board does not respond, then it is deemed to agree with the applicant. So I think it's important tonight to consider the application. I think we may be waiting for one more document so that it's fully complete. To direct a referral to the planning board because there is an application form that East Point has put in, and to request that the planning board offer its opinion within 30 days. There's also a requirement, as you know, for everything you do, that you advertise for a public hearing, and that you notice the public hearing by mailing to the adjoining neighbors. Not to go off on a jag, but my understanding is that the applicant has mailed notice of a public hearing for tonight to the adjoining neighbors. However, there was no publication, and, pardon me, but my reading of the code is that the board, or technically the administrative staff, should be making the mailing. So if you ask me, I would say the other thing you should do is to direct that the hearing be published, the notice of it be published, and that notice of it be given to the neighbors. Consent, referral, set the hearing, notice. That's it. The only other thing is, and I know I'm interrupting Ms. Perkins and Mr. Connick, but the other thing to do is the timing of this, which, as you explained, you're meeting tonight, and I'm sure that staff in the next couple of days can get a packet and a notice out, but the notice has to be for a 30-day period. The planning board is going to meet on the 13th of February, and I expect that they probably could deal with this then. The planning board chair knows there's going to be a referral, but there's been no discussion about the schedule of when it would come back. So the next zoning board meeting would be February 22nd, but, pardon me, February 22nd is less than 30 days from when this notice would go out to the planning board. So my suggestion to the chair was to schedule the hearing for the 22nd of March. And I also did mention to the chair and to counsel for the applicant that they might raise the potential for a special meeting to shorten up the time frame, but I don't know how frequently, if ever, this board has special meetings.
We can arrange one, I'm sure.
I don't know if they're going to ask for it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But, again, my misunderstanding, as convoluted as it may be, is that once we make our interpretation, which ideally would be March 22nd, if we interpret them to be a public utility, then we're done.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
because-
people can, as we say,
Because a public utility can go anywhere, essentially.
Well, it's allowed in that zone.
Yeah, yes, okay,
It is allowed
yes,
in that
yeah.
zone.
public utility facilities are allowed in the residential zone.
Right.
And
Therefore, they wouldn't have
the
to come back
disagreement here is
after that.
between the zoning administrator and
No,
East
then
Point
it's-
subsidiary as to whether it's a public utility facility. I mean, I'm not talking about people suing, it's not, because people can do whatever they do. But if you were to find that it was a public utility facility, my guess is the applicant would be pleased and probably would not hear further from them. On the other hand, pursue if they disagree with the zoning board.
Thank you. Mr. Connick, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, by all means. And again, I will keep this brief because I know we're going to have to rehash this later on. Very quickly on fire safety, I have had a couple conversations with the fire chief, but we're trying to schedule a time to talk in more detail about this project. But lithium-ion batteries and these types of projects are a proven technology and have a safe design. It's not to say that there haven't ever been fires, but those risks we've learned a lot from previous incidents, and they can be mitigated, and there hasn't been a history of fires spreading beyond the project. But, you know, the lithium-ion batteries are found in all sorts of household items. I know that I go to sleep with my cell phone a few feet from my head. I'm not really worried about it combusting. And this is in a much more controlled environment than a cell phone, which is exposed to a lot of different environments throughout the day. The batteries are kept within metal enclosures. Each one has a firewall between it and other parts of the enclosure. And there's a fire suppression system within the enclosures, and then each separate container essentially is spaced apart from other containers and surrounded by gravel so that there's nothing flammable around it. The project would adhere to a lot of different codes, local, state, federal codes, industry codes. New York actually has the most robust fire safety code for these projects also in the country. The Department of State has pretty strong guidelines, including NFPA 855, which is kind of the leading code that we adhere to. The project would also have 24/7 monitoring, so if there's ever an issue with the project, it can be shut down automatically. And then local first responder partnership, as you mentioned, Ms. Perkins. You know, we make sure that firefighters are trained to respond to a fire, they have the equipment, and also that they have the continuing training over the duration of the life of the project so that, you know, they continue to keep their skills honed. On environmental safety, as I touched on before, there's no emissions from the project other than typical stormwater. And, you know, this is a pretty small impervious surface, what we're proposing. You know, the exact numbers haven't been finalized yet. Touch on household materials, recycling, so batteries don't last forever. There's increasingly a large market for recycling batteries in the US. And so once a battery is no longer operating at a certain capacity, you can recycle it and put a new battery into the enclosure. There's very minimal traffic and lighting. Cars, once it's constructed, people come by about once a week to check on things. And the lighting is generally motion censored, aimed downwards, just for safety. And there's no other environmental concerns that we're aware of at this point with the property, such as wetlands or threatened species or what have you. And this was my duplicate slide, so apologies. And that gets me to the last part, the interpretation. I think our counsel was going to share a few words on that, unless there's any other questions for me right now. All right, thank you.
Okay. It seems that our ruling merely is as to whether we feel that this application is complete and is anybody?
I just have a few.
You're so quiet. I didn't know.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
I'll be quick. But I just want to give you folks something to think about until the next meeting when the application is determined. But what we're focused on here is whether the project that Mr. Connick described falls within the public utility facility. So over the past 2 years, I think there's been 3 opinions from the zoning administrator as to whether this project falls within the public utility facility. Two of those opinions decided, yes, it does fall within the public utility facility as a public utility facility, and then the last one said that it did not fall as a public utility facility. So I'm sure, as you all know, the zoning codes, being in a derogation of the common law, must be strictly construed against the municipality and in favor of the property owner or applicant, in accordance with their ordinary meaning, and any ambiguities are to be resolved in favor of the applicant or the property owner. Here, there clearly are ambiguities. We have two letters from zoning administrators that determine that, yes, this does fall within a public utility facility, and then we have the last letter that said it does not. So there are clearly ambiguities with the definition of the public utility facility as it's defined in the town code. So the town code defines a public utility facility as an installation used by a public agency or a specially franchised public utility to supply or transmit electric. And it goes on for some other items as well, but that's really the key definition there. And as Mr. Connick described, so the definition uses the word used by a public agency or specially franchised public utility. It does not use the word owned by a public agency or a specially franchised public utility. And the last letter that was received from the zoning administrator with her determination, she concluded that because the Pleasant Valley Energy Center was not a public agency or a specially franchised public utility, and the battery storage facility is not a public utility facility. But the definition of public utility facility does not require that the installation be owned by the public agency or special franchise public utility. It just requires that the installation be used by a public agency or specially franchised public utility, which Mr. Connick has described that in fact the installation will be used by a public agency or specially franchised public utility. With that, that's our key argument, and I'll leave it at that. And we'll be happy to come back here at the March 22nd date, or if we can get a sooner date, which I'll discuss with Mr. Nelson. And thank you for your time tonight.
And you are aware that upon your return, we will need a letter of permission from the landowner?
Yes, we will do with that. There's I spoke with Mr. Nelson about that. We'll be sure to take care of that, or satisfy some different type of documentation if we can't get that, but I don't think it should be a problem.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either. It's just that, and there's no reason for us not to hear what we have heard tonight, because there is no decision being reached. So, when we do the interpretation, that's when we will obviously need the letter.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Yes.
Looks to me like what we've been provided with so far is that there's just basically an argument or disagreement over what the definition of public utility facility is. That's between your company and the town's code, basically. Is there anything you can point to outside of what we've defined here, like the Public Service Commission, that would help maybe give a better definition of what a public utility is, or public utility facility?
I don't have that with me, but I will be prepared. I'll look and see if there's anything that I can find for our next meeting. But the town,
It's coming down to basically, you guys think it means one thing, and zoning administrators says, no, I think it means something else. So.
Well, the zoning administrator also thought at one point in time that it meant what we believed it meant as well. But
they were different people.
so there was one opinion letter from her predecessor, I don't remember what his name is, but
Tom Lanes.
then the current zoning administrator did issue a letter that recertified the previous letter and determined that it was a public utility facility. I understand what you're asking for, and I'll look for it, but I would just also state that the town is the one that defines what the terms are in their code. So this is the town's definition, and as I said, you know, ambiguities in zoning codes, you know, by law should be resolved in favor of the applicant or the property owner. So if there is in fact an ambiguity, which we believe that there is an ambiguity, it should be resolved in our favor.
Well, did you ask her why she changed her mind?
I personally did not. There was another attorney in my office that asked her, and it was based on a course, but I did not get any further, he did not get any further information other than that. Or a class, maybe. I don't want to miscite what she said. I think a class.
Could you just say again where it states that ambiguities, you talked about, I think, common law or something, where it states that ambiguities are resolved in favor of the applicant?
So,
Reference something.
sure, there's case law. I didn't come with case law tonight, but I'm happy to provide that to the town prior to our next meeting, the case law that cites from the second department that the ambiguities are resolved in favor of the property owner or applicant in this case.
Okay.
So what do we do? Do we adjourn this?
I'd like to adjourn it. Well, I guess it would be,
Should we adjourn it tonight
yeah,
until,
we should adjourn it until such time as
There
we...
was no hearing tonight. It wasn't published notice.
oh, really?
Right.
So consequently, I don't think we even have to vote on it.
So whether you adjourn it or move to set the hearing for the 22nd of March or some day before then, is really up to you.
I mean, after discussing, I don't speak at a term, but after discussing with my client, we most likely will meet for the second, or for the special meeting. But I don't know the process of that. I can look it up in the town code and figure out what the process of that. I just want to make sure the planning board, I guess my question first would be whether the planning board is going to have sufficient time and will have a response around the February 13th date that they're meeting next. So we can discuss that at a later date.
The difficulty with that is that this board has to set the date of either the hearing at a regular meeting or a special meeting date, because that'll be it'll be the basis for the publication and the notice to the neighbors. So you and I might be able to work something out, but somehow it has to get to the board to do the deciding on when it would be.
And the notice is 5 days, correct, for the adjoining property owners? So by the board's next meeting date, which is February 21st or February 22nd, I guess we'll know whether the planning board has had enough time to consider this and given their opinion, if any, to the zoning board. And at that meeting, could I then request the special meeting?
Actually, pardon me.
Okay.
Yeah, so the board, I think, does want to refer it to the planning board so that it has the 30 days notice. And the planning board will meet on February 13th. And if the planning board were to wait till March 13th, it would have waited beyond the 30 days. So my guess is that the planning board will have a response coming out of its meeting on the 13th. So if it has a response coming out of the meeting on the 13th, you'd have it by the 22nd. And I think you could wait till February 22nd to set the hearing date.
Okay.
But if you're doing the setting on February
on the,
Then the next regular meeting is March 22nd, unless the board, can be made comfortable that it should have a special meeting sometime between the 22nd of February and the 22nd of March.
understood.
But I'm going to work it through myself. So anyway, you're comfortable just putting it over to the 13th, right? Or the 23rd, or 22nd of February?
Yes, the 22nd of February, yes.
Okay, so. Rather than set a hearing, the request is to notice this to the planning board for its recommendation,
Correct.
to adjourn the meeting to the 22nd of February, and at the meeting on the 22nd of February, to set a hearing date, which could be the 22nd of March, or given the fact that the notices only have to be 5 days out, it could be sometime further in if the board wanted to do that.
Yes, correct.
Okay?
Yes.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Would anybody be adverse to having a special meeting earlier? How pressing is this?
You told me, how much you talking to save, what, a couple of weeks?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Really?
Yeah, okay.
So,
I mean, it's been a couple of years already, so.
so the reason behind the request for the special meeting is that the applicant has an option for a contract of sale with the current property owner. The option, it's a year option that is coming up on its year end,
March 12th.
March 12th, so they're either going to have to renew or not renew. So that is the reason for the request for the special meeting. It's not just to, it's not, that's the purpose behind the request for the special meeting.
So if the board returned on the 22nd of February and decided to set a hearing, and if my recollection is correct, that it's 5 days for neighbors' notice and also 5 days for the hearing, publications, did we get that?
Yes, I did, and I believe that,
And it takes a couple days to get things into the Poughkeepsie Journal. Okay? So, come back on the 22nd. The option expires on March 12th. Subtract, give or take 8 or 9 days from that to get it into the paper. That's the 3rd of March. And the zoning board meeting would have to happen before then, sometime between the 22nd and the 3rd, correct?
yes.
The board came back on February 22nd and needed, let's say, 10 days in order to get published and mailed notice and then have a meeting. 10 days from the 22nd is the 6th of March, is that about right?
That looks like a good week.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. So it could happen, and the board could render a decision conceivably. I mean, I can't guarantee they'll close the hearing,
Of course.
but if they wanted to set a special meeting on the 22nd to be held on the 6th of March, maybe it works.
Sure. So I will come back here on February
Does anybody
22nd.
have any problems with that?
I have no idea.
That's a Monday night. Is that a town board meeting?
That's what we're
Uh,
gonna have to check. If
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it is the first Monday.
Hmm.
Well, then Tuesday, what happens here on Tuesdays?
It's-
court,
Oh, but that's down the hall, right?
it actually
Yeah, but
happens.
they'll be in here with their attorneys. Well, why don't we do it the Wednesday of that week? So 6th, 7th, 8th,
8, so isn't it
or
answer?
8th and 9th? Yeah. And that would still allow them to maintain their option to purchase. And it would be a Wednesday. And, I don't know. How do you folks feel about it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what
You don't know
I
what's
may or
going
may
on?
not be committed to,
All right.
without checking, going home and seeing what's on my calendar and that kind of stuff.
Okay, let's do it this way. We are going to meet on the 22nd anyway, February 22nd. So if we do, we could tentatively set it for early March, because by then, ideally, everyone will know their schedule with it. Does that sound reasonable? I mean, if you go home and find out, hey, I'm gonna be in Acapulco, then so be it.
If I was gonna be in Acapulco,
Okay,
it'd be
yeah,
on the
no.
phone, trust me.
So you're suggesting that it be adjourned to the 22nd, the 22nd, right, of February?
Well, yeah, because that's our next meeting, is February 22nd.
To potentially set, possibly set, a
Yeah.
public
Right.
meeting for about the 8th, and I guess failing that, at the regular meeting on the 22nd.
Is the 8th a
Committing
Wednesday?
right now to set a
Yeah.
special meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
But you do want the referral to the planning board. You can do a motion on that, probably.
All right. Yeah, so we're gonna have to, tonight, essentially, all we're doing is
Sending it to the
passing
planning board.
judgment on the application and then referring to the planning board. All right, do we need a vote on that?
Well, does everybody think the application is complete?
Oh, I think
That's the first
Well,
question.
that's what I'm saying.
change it, perhaps.
Well, has anybody looked at the application?
The only thing I saw missing was the consent from the property owner.
Right, which we will have.
And I guess they have not sent out anything to the neighbors, so that has to be.
There was,
No, they
there-
can't send that out yet, right?
No,
So,
can't
There
send it
was-
out till after the meeting of the
as
22nd.
soon as I said it, I realized.
there was something sent out that was required by somebody at the town that we sent out to the adjoining property owners on 5 days' notice. And I think that there was a publication in the newspaper, actually, which we
I
were,
don't have it here, so-
we were told to do by the town, which that did occur. So, and that was done for tonight, but understanding that once
It
the,
would have to go out again.
again, for the
But
March,
they don't have
meeting.
to do that for a planning board, right? No, okay.
No, it's not a public hearing in front of the planning board, it appears on the agenda.
Then, shall we move?
How many days, because they submitted this application on the 10th of this month? Is that right?
January 10th or 11th, yeah.
Yeah, 11th, yeah.
And how many days beforehand are they supposed to have it in? Before our meeting? I don't
5
remember.
days, huh?
How many? 5?
How, what's, you're
Beats me.
the calendar
I
expert.
can't hear what the question is.
Okay, you're the calendar expert, you've got it all there up on the wall.
How many days before the date of submission?
They gave it to us the day of the deadline for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we would look at then is, do we deem this application to be complete, first of all? And then, if we deem that to be the case, then we would adjourn this meeting until March.
We're not gonna-
Oh, no, that's right, we would,
Or all we wanna do is say it's complete
Complete.
and
And send it to planning.
to planning for their
Right.
recommendation.
Right, because February 22nd is when, yeah. Okay. I would deem this application to be complete and would recommend that we pass it on to the planning board.
So moved.
Second.
Would you like to call the roll? Well, okay, Mr. Kish,
Okay, good.
Ms. Smith, okay, Mr. Mapp,
In favor?
okay. And you must be in favor. so
Yes.
Second, yeah.
In
And
favor.
Ms. Burton.
In favor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll be back on the 22nd of February. And then we will set a special meeting for March 8th. And that'll be within your timeframe,
Okay, thank you.
okay?
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Moving right along. On, here we are, on the GLO variance, would you like to discuss this?
Looks unclear to me.
I don't have anything I can talk about.
Anyone have any questions, any concerns? Anything you have?
Tentative.
Okay,
I want to say something.
yes.
Thank you very much for filling out the form completely and not leaving any blanks. I appreciate that. I have to think about with it coming in front. Yes.
Yes, she
Come in
does.
front And don't bother answering the questions.
I have to confess, my wife helped me with.
So thank you.
Okay.
All right. Resolution, approval of resolution. Whereas the applicant Wayne and Judith Chalo has submitted proof in support of their application for an 8-foot side lot variance, which under the code of the town of Pleasant Valley requires the issuance of a variance, and whereas such proof has been duly considered by the board at a public meeting, and whereas an area variance is a request for relief from dimensional standards contained in the zoning ordinance, and it requires a demonstration of practical difficulty. And whereas relief may be granted if the applicant can demonstrate that the strict compliance to the zoning chapter would cause practical difficulty, and whereas the determination of practical difficulty is a three-step process in which the applicant must demonstrate that the application will cause a significant economic injury, and once the applicant has demonstrated economic injury, he must show that the regulation in question is reasonable, related to the legitimate exercise of police power, and assuming that the regulation in question is reasonably related to the legitimate exercise of police power, the applicant must demonstrate the restrictions as strictly applied in his or her case are unrelated to the public health, safety, or welfare of the community, and that granting the variance will not adversely affect the community, and whereas the board should grant the minimum relief necessary to allow reasonable use of the land, now therefore be it resolved that the board finds that the following special circumstances or conditions exist which apply to the applicant's land or building, which do not apply generally to the land or buildings of the neighborhood. The only thing I can come up with that he cannot put the carport elsewhere because of the septic and AC. If anyone can come up with something else, that's fine.
He also testified that he has 4 other vehicles, which include other classic vehicles.
Okay.
That he would like to houses as well.
Right. And be it further resolved, that the board finds that the above circumstances or conditions are such that the strict application of the provisions of Chapter 98 of the Code of Town of Pleasant Valley results in practical difficulty and would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of their land. And be it further resolved that the reasons set forth below, the board determines that the granting of the variance is necessary for the reasonable use of the applicant's land and building, and that the variance is granted is the minimum variance that will accomplish the proposed use. And be it further resolved that the board finds that the above circumstances or conditions are such that strict application of the provision of Chapter 98 of the Code of the Town of Pleasant Valley results in practical difficulty and would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of their land. And be it further resolved that the board determines that the granting of the variance shall be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning chapter of the Code of the Town of Pleasant Valley and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare, and I put that in the form of a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Would Secretary get a call the roll? Gotcha.
Ms. Myers?
In favor.
Ms. Adams?
In favor.
Ms. Perkins?
In favor.
Ms. Bamba?
Yes.
Mr. Melcher?
In favor?
Ms. Smith?
In favor.
Mr. Kish?
I approve.
Mr. Dunn?
In favor. Go for it, and you pick up your permit. I would give Sarah a call beforehand, just to, make sure she's gonna be here and that the building inspector will, You're all set?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry it took so long. I didn't anticipate that this, was gonna take so long. Okay, very good, thank you. Oh, yes, yeah, we do. Also, the last thing on the agenda is the reappointment of Vanderwater, Mr. Jim Nelson, as our attorney. Those in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, we're good. Thank you. You're, look, you.
Too late, we already have.
You're in.
Yeah, you keep telling her.
You're in. You can leave now.
I couldn't help myself. I wanted to know what his 1967 truck is. He showed me a picture, and I said, no, I really shouldn't do it while I'm I can all appreciate it. Thank you. Take care of it.
Are we done?
I'd like to talk to you guys from, well, I'd like to talk. Are we going through executive session?
Depends on what you want to do. If it's questions and answers with a lawyer, you can go to an attorney-client session. But the scope of a executive sessions are narrower.
Okay, it will not be in regard to any of our appeals.
Okay. Is it an attorney-client thing? Or you-
Not really, no.
My question is,
Yeah.
you want me to ask it now?
Oh,
I want this up for asking.
yeah,
I can talk to Ms. Bamba,
Yeah,
so it's not a,
okay, yeah, I'd just like to talk among the board here rather than, have it open to the public, or have.
Okay.
If
when
that's-
you're a quorum, doing public business,
We have to, okay. All right, then we'll leave it open, but we can't cut off the camera.
you cannot what?
We can.
You can, and the action you take would have to be memorialized in a resolution.
I just
You have
have a
to keep minutes
simple
of what you
question about the code and procedure, that's all my question today.
Okay, well, that's an attorney-client question.
Okay.
No, it is. I think it's legit.
attorney-client.
I don't want to do this without knowing what it is we're going to do.
Well,
I have no clue what you're talking about.
okay, I'd like to talk to you guys about it.
Okay, fine. You want to go over to Dunkin' Donuts and just sit and have a coffee and talk, or what?
No.
No, that would be illegal.
No, it's not. There's two people in the town sitting together having a coffee. What's the deal?
Or 8 people.
You're not making any
Why can't we
decisions.
do it
You're
here?
not making any kind of change. You're
No,
not
it's
discussing
not.
any kind of appeals.
All right, I'm just gonna throw it out.
I just have a procedure question.
All right, go ahead with your procedure question.
It's not, no, it's not executive session. We don't have,
We have microphones on it.
right? It's executive session.
If you were to move to go into attorney-client session, you would not normally record what you're doing. And that's designed to be something where people like ask questions of lawyers, and lawyers do their best to answer. You know, rather than working over a particular appeal or something like that. So it's up to you. I'm happy to stay, and if there are attorney-client questions, I'll just make a motion to go into attorney-client session, and
We do that? All right, make a motion, we go into attorney-client session.
So moved.
Second,
Favor?
okay,
In favor.
Thank you.
in favor.
No.
So we shut down.
Okay.